Maya pushed the stroller slowly down the path that led into the park, her son's small hand clutching the edge, as his eyes darted around with excitement at the sight of the swings and slides ahead. It was supposed to be an ordinary afternoon, one where she could let him run free while she sat on a bench and caught her breath from the heavy weight of life's endless responsibilities. As a single mother, every day was filled with work, bills, and the quiet worry of whether she was giving her child enough. Yet here, beneath the shade of tall trees, she hoped to steal a moment of peace. She spread out a blanket, unpacked the snacks she had prepared, and smiled as her son darted toward the playground, his laughter carrying across the open air. For a few precious minutes, it felt like nothing could touch them. She leaned back, letting the cool breeze brush across her face, unaware that sharp eyes were watching her from a distance. Something about the way the world seemed to quiet made her straighten slightly, the sense of calm mixing with a strange unease she couldn't explain. A mother's instinct never rested, and though she told herself she was only imagining it, a whisper of tension curled in her chest. Maya focused on her son's joy, trying to push the feeling aside. But deep down she knew this afternoon would not stay simple for long. The park looked ordinary to everyone else, yet for her, it was about to become the stage for a moment she could never have predicted. A test of strength and dignity that would change not only her day, but perhaps the way her son would remember his mother forever. As Maya sat on the bench, trying to enjoy the calm of the park, her eyes drifted across the open space and landed on two police officers standing a short distance away. At first, she thought it was just coincidence, that they were simply patrolling like they always did. But the way their eyes lingered on her told a different story. Their gaze was not casual. It was sharp, narrow, almost as if they were trying to read something hidden in her. Maya's heart gave a small, uneasy thump, though she had done absolutely nothing wrong. She shifted slightly on the bench, adjusting the snacks beside her, hoping the feeling would pass, but their stare only grew stronger, pulling her into an invisible tension. Her son was still playing happily, unaware of the way the world had suddenly shifted around them, and Maya forced herself to smile at him, though her stomach tightened. She tried to brush off the thought, telling herself not to overthink, but the silence of the officers, the way they leaned closer to each other and whispered something she couldn't hear, made her pulse quicken. She knew that look, they were not simply watching the park, they were watching her. The moment stretched, heavy and uncomfortable, and Maya felt like she was sitting beneath a spotlight no one else could see. A question burned in her mind. Why? Why her? Why now, when all she wanted was a quiet day with her child? She tried to stay calm, but a flicker of suspicion passed through her thoughts, leaving her wondering what was about to come next. That quiet stare was no accident, and Maya could already sense that the peace of this afternoon was about to break. Maya's breath caught the moment she saw the two officers break away from their spot and begin walking directly toward her, their steps steady and deliberate, leaving no doubt about their intentions. The sound of their heavy boots on the paved path seemed louder than the laughter of children nearby, and with every step closer, the sense of unease inside her grew stronger. She sat upright, her hands resting calmly on her lap, though her heart thudded faster, trying not to let the rising tension show on her face. Her son glanced back at her from the swings, smiling innocently, not realizing that something unsettling was unfolding just a few feet away. When the officers finally stopped in front of her, their presence cast a shadow over her seat, and one of them spoke in a clipped tone, asking what she was doing there, as if her very existence in the park required an explanation. Maya blinked, taken aback by the sharpness of the question, her mind racing for a response that would keep the situation steady. She explained in calm words that she was simply spending the afternoon with her child, but their eyes scanned her with the same suspicion, as though they were searching for something more. The other officer leaned slightly forward, his questions layered with doubt, ignoring the obvious truth that she was nothing more than a mother on a park bench. Around them the world continued as normal, children playing, parents chatting, birds fluttering overhead, yet, for Maya, the space between her and the officers felt like a storm building in silence. She kept her voice steady, but inside she knew this was not just a simple conversation. Something heavier was pressing against the moment, and she braced herself for what was to come. Maya forced a calm smile as the officers' questions kept coming, each one sharper than the last, as though they were peeling away layers of her life, searching for something that did not exist. She answered with patience, her words steady, her voice soft but firm, reminding herself not to let her rising frustration slip through. Yet the tone in their voices carried an edge that made her heart beat faster, a rhythm of unease she couldn't ignore. They asked why she chose this park, how long she had been sitting there, whether she lived nearby, and every answer seemed only to invite another question, heavier and more suspicious than before. It was as if they were waiting for her to trip, to contradict herself, to expose some hidden truth she didn't even have. Maya's hands rested on her knees, her fingers curled slightly, not in anger, but in restraint, because she knew one wrong gesture could twist the moment into something far worse. Her son's laughter rang out again, and she turned her eyes to him briefly, drawing strength from his innocence, even as the weight of the officer's gaze pressed down on her. Around them, life in the park went on undisturbed. But to Maya, the world felt narrowed to this small circle of questioning, a stage where every word mattered. She kept her breathing slow, her answers measured, but in her chest grew a quiet storm of emotions, frustration, sadness, and the unshakable feeling of being judged unfairly. The officers did not see a mother. They saw something else entirely, and that realization sent a ripple of tension through her body. She held her ground, refusing to let fear break her voice. But deep inside, she knew this was only the beginning of a battle she had never asked for. Just as Maya tried to steady her voice under the weight of the officer's questions, she felt a small tug at her side. Her little boy had returned from the playground, his carefree laughter gone, replaced by wide eyes filled with confusion. He slipped his small hand into hers, gripping tightly as though afraid she might be taken away, and in a trembling whisper, he asked why the men in uniform seemed upset with his mother. The sound of his innocent question cut through her heart like nothing else, making the tension of the moment even heavier. She gave his hand a gentle squeeze, forcing a reassuring smile down at him, though inside, she felt a storm rising. The officers paused briefly at the boy's words, but their silence carried no warmth, only a cold weight that made the child press closer to her side. Maya bent slightly, brushing her fingers over his hair, telling him softly that everything was fine, though she wasn't sure she believed it herself. His eyes searched hers, desperate for comfort, and she knew she had to be strong not only for herself, but for him. The fear in his voice, the way his body trembled against her, reminded Maya that this was more than just a confrontation. It was a lesson her son was learning about the world, one that no child should have to see so soon. She wanted to protect his innocence, to shield him from the harshness of suspicion and judgment. Yet the scene unfolding before them was stripping it away piece by piece. With every heartbeat, Maya's determination grew. No matter what happened next, she could not allow fear to be the memory her son carried from this day. Maya held her son's hand firmly, feeling the tiny tremor of his fingers. And in that moment, something deep inside her stirred a silent strength, born from every struggle she had faced as a mother. Her heart ached, seeing the fear in his eyes, but she knew she could not let him witness her break under pressure. The officer's sharp tone and suspicious stares tried to corner her, yet she drew herself taller, her voice calm and even, refusing to let a trace of fear slip through. She spoke with quiet certainty, answering each question with patience, though inside her chest a storm of emotions swirled: anger, sadness, and an unwavering instinct to protect. Her son's presence gave her courage, reminding her that she was not just defending herself. She was showing him what strength looked like when the world turned unfair. The officers seemed unsettled by her steady composure, as if they expected nervousness or defensiveness, but instead found a woman whose calm held more power than raised voices ever could. Maya's heart raced, yet her face stayed firm, her words measured like a shield. She wanted her son to see that dignity did not come from uniforms or authority, but from the choice to stand unshaken, even when the ground trembled beneath you. Every second felt stretched thin, the weight of silence pressing between them. But Maya refused to let fear be the voice that answered. She knew eyes in the park might be watching, strangers who saw only fragments of what was happening. Yet her focus never left her child and the need to keep him safe. In that fragile space, strength became her only weapon, silent but powerful, guiding her through the storm she never asked for but could no longer avoid. One of the officers finally leaned closer, his words slow but heavy, suggesting that Maya did not belong in the park, as if her simple presence on the bench beside her child was somehow a mistake. The accusation struck her like a cold wind, unexpected and unfair, for she had done nothing but bring her son out to play. Her son looked up at her with wide, questioning eyes, too young to understand why anyone would say such a thing, but old enough to feel the sting in their voices. Maya swallowed the ache in her chest, steadying herself before speaking, her calm tone hiding the frustration building beneath the surface. She explained again that she was only there with her child, yet her words seemed to bounce against a wall of doubt, ignored as though her truth carried no weight. Around them, the park went on, children running, families laughing, the world moving without pause. Yet to Maya, it felt as if a circle of isolation had formed, trapping her under a gaze that refused to see her humanity. The accusation was not spoken loudly, but its sharpness carried more power than a shout, echoing inside her mind with a quiet cruelty. For a moment, Maya felt the sting of invisibility, as if her role as a mother, her effort, her very presence, could be erased with a single sentence from someone who didn't know her story. She held her son closer, her protective instinct rising again, knowing she had to respond not with anger but with the quiet strength that had carried her through every trial. The unfair words lingered in the air, but Maya's silence was not defeated, was patience, the kind that waits for the right moment to show a truth that cannot be denied. Maya sat in stillness, her son pressed against her side, and for a brief moment she hesitated, caught between the desire to keep her life private and the growing urge to end the injustice unfolding before her eyes. She had built her days around staying quiet, blending in, carrying the weight of responsibility without drawing attention to herself. Yet now that quiet life was being tested. The officer's suspicion hung in the air like a shadow, their words circling back again and again, as if trying to trap her in a story that wasn't hers. She felt the sting of frustration tightening in her chest, but deeper than that, she felt the steady thrum of a strength she rarely allowed anyone to see. There was more to her than what they saw sitting on a park bench, more than the picture of a single mother holding her son's hand. Her identity carried a weight of its own, one that could silence every unfair doubt cast her way, yet she had kept it hidden for so long, guarding it carefully, because she wanted her son to know her as a mother first, not a title. But now, as the tension grew heavier, Maya realized she could not allow this moment to define her with silence. She could feel her son's trembling slowing as he leaned into her, trusting her to make the fear go away, and in that trust, Maya understood she had no choice but to act. The power she carried was not something she flaunted, yet it was real, undeniable, and it waited within her like a locked door she was finally ready to open. Her hesitation faded with each beat of her heart, and slowly, her decision began to take shape. Maya took a slow breath, her hand tightening gently around her son's before she let go and reached for her bag. Every movement she made was calm and deliberate, though inside her heart beat like a drum. The officers stood stiffly, their eyes narrowing as they followed her actions, perhaps expecting a slip, perhaps waiting for something to confirm their doubts. But Maya's face carried no fear, only quiet resolve, as she unzipped the small pocket of her bag and slipped her fingers inside. For a brief second, she paused, her son watching with wide eyes, not fully understanding what his mother was about to do. Then, with steady grace, she pulled out a leather case and flipped it open, the silver and blue of her FBI credentials catching the light. She held it firmly, not waving it, not boasting, but placing it where both officers could see, without question. The silence that followed was almost physical, pressing down on the space between them. The badge, simple yet powerful, told a truth her words alone could not carry. Maya's eyes did not waver as she met their gaze, her hands steady, her body composed, as if she had been preparing for this moment all along. Her son leaned against her, sensing the sudden shift, though still too young to grasp the meaning of what she had revealed. The officers, once so sharp in their tone, faltered in the quiet, their questions dying on their lips as realization washed over their faces. It was no longer a mother they were confronting, but an agent whose authority far outweighed their suspicion. Maya said nothing more, for her silence, backed by the weight of the badge, spoke louder than any defense she could give. The moment Maya's badge caught the light, the entire mood of the park seemed to change. The air, once thick with tension, shifted into something heavier, almost suffocating, as silence fell between them. The two officers, who only moments ago had stood tall with commanding voices and sharp questions, now seemed frozen in place. Their eyes lingered on the badge, their expressions caught somewhere between shock and embarrassment, as though the ground beneath them had suddenly been pulled away. They exchanged a quick glance, their earlier confidence crumbling under the weight of a truth they had not expected to face. Maya held their gaze steadily, her hand firm, her expression calm but unyielding, allowing the silence itself to do the speaking. Her son pressed closer to her side, sensing the strange shift in power, though he did not fully understand it. His fears slowly replaced by curiosity. Around them, the park carried on with its laughter and chatter, but for these few moments, it felt as though the world had narrowed to a small circle of stillness, where only the three adults and one child existed. The officers' shoulders stiffened, their mouths parting as if to speak, yet no words came, for nothing they could say would undo the weight of their mistake. Maya did not rush to fill the silence. Instead, she let it stretch, each second reminding them of the unfairness they had forced upon her. The sudden quiet was more powerful than any confrontation, a mirror reflecting their actions back at them. In that pause, they were no longer the ones in control, and they knew it. For the first time since the encounter began, it was not Maya who was under scrutiny, but the officers themselves. The silence broke, not with authority, but with hesitation, as one of the officers finally cleared his throat and shifted back a step. His tone softened, stripped of the sharp edge it had carried before. The other followed quickly, his earlier confidence replaced by a careful politeness that almost seemed unnatural, as though they were suddenly unsure how to stand in front of the woman they had tried to corner. Their words, once heavy with suspicion, now came out measured and respectful, every syllable chosen with care, because the truth of who Maya was left no room for arrogance. She remained still, her badge held firmly, her eyes steady, while her son leaned against her, watching with quiet wonder as the men in uniform transformed before him. The power in the moment did not come from raised voices or threats, but from the realization etched across the officers' faces they had misjudged her completely, and now they were the ones exposed. Maya did not gloat, did not let anger shape her reply. Instead, she spoke in the same calm voice she had carried from the beginning, reminding them indirectly that respect should never come only after a badge is seen. The officers nodded quickly, their bodies tense, trying to recover from the weight of their mistake, but the shift in their manner revealed everything. They stepped back just enough to break the circle of tension, their movements slower, their voices careful, as though every word they now spoke was an attempt to repair what could not truly be undone. To them, Maya was no longer a mother to be questioned, but an agent to be respected, and in that sudden reversal, the truth stood clear. Power had always been hers, not because of the badge, but because of the strength she carried within. Maya gently closed the badge and slipped it back into her bag, her movements calm and steady, but her son's eyes never left her face. He stood close, his small fingers still curled around her hand, his gaze wide with awe and curiosity. He did not fully understand what the shiny card meant, or why the officers had suddenly changed their voices, but he understood enough to know that his mother had just shown a strength far greater than anything he had ever seen. The fear that had clouded his young eyes only moments before was gone, replaced by a quiet pride that shone brighter than his words could express. He leaned against her side, a small smile tugging at his lips, as though he had just discovered a secret about his mother that made her even more extraordinary in his eyes. To him, she had not only stood against the men in uniform, but had done so without raising her voice, without letting fear win. That kind of courage settled into his heart like a story he would carry forever. Maya glanced down at him, giving his hand a reassuring squeeze, and in his look she found the strength she had needed all along. Around them, the park carried on as if nothing had happened, yet for the boy, the world felt different now. Safer, because he knew his mother could stand tall, even when shadows tried to press her down. He did not understand the weight of the badge, but he understood her power, and in that moment, he felt not just safe but proud to be her son, proud to call her his protector, and proud to know that even in silence, her strength could never be broken. Maya stood quietly for a moment, her hand still resting on her son's shoulder. Before she finally spoke, her voice steady and calm, carrying more weight than any raised tone could. She looked directly at the officers, not with anger, but with a measured firmness, and told them that respect should never come only after seeing a badge. Her words were simple, yet they cut through the silence like a clear bell, reminding them that every person, no matter who they are, deserves dignity. She explained that a mother with her child in the park should not need credentials to be treated fairly, that kindness and fairness are not privileges to be earned but rights to be given. The officers listened in silence, their earlier boldness gone, their eyes lowered as if her words pressed against their conscience. Maya did not accuse them harshly, but her message carried a quiet power, forcing them to see the truth in what she said. Her son looked up at her, listening closely, though he did not grasp every word. He understood enough to know that his mother was teaching not just them but him as well. The park felt different now, as though the air itself had shifted with the weight of her lesson. The officers nodded stiffly, their voices low, as they offered a few careful words. But nothing they said could carry the strength of her quiet truth. Maya's calm presence filled the space more fully than authority ever could, and as she turned her attention back to her son, she knew the lesson she had spoken was not only for the men before her, but for the boy at her side, who would carry her words into his own life one day. Maya decided it was time to leave, and with a quiet nod to her son, she gathered their things and began the slow walk out of the park. The officers had stepped aside, their presence no longer pressing against her, but the weight of the encounter still lingered in the air. Her son's small hand fit snugly into hers, and she held it tighter than before, as if to reassure both him and herself that everything was truly behind them now. The path stretched ahead, lined with trees and dappled sunlight. But for Maya it felt different, heavier, because she knew her son had seen more than a child his age should have. He had seen the sting of judgment in the officer's questions, the way suspicion could fall without reason, and she wished she could erase those moments from his memory. Yet she also knew he had witnessed something else, something stronger, the quiet courage it took to stand firm, to face unfairness without losing dignity. As they walked, her son glanced up at her often, his eyes filled with questions he could not yet put into words, but his grip told her everything. He trusted her, admired her, and most of all, he felt safe again. The sounds of laughter and play faded behind them, replaced by the crunch of gravel beneath their steps. each one taking them further away from the storm that had passed. Maya breathed deeply, letting the cool air steady her, knowing that while this day had tested her strength, it had also planted something lasting in her child's heart. Their walk was quiet, but within that silence lived a powerful truth. He had seen the harshness of the world, but he had also seen the beauty of standing unshaken against it. Years later, the memory of that day in the park would remain clear in the boy's mind, not as a shadow of fear, but as a lesson that shaped the way he saw the world. He would remember the sharp voices of the officers, the way suspicion had hovered over his mother for no reason, and the way his small hand had trembled as he clung to hers. But stronger than all of that, he would remember how she stood tall, calm, and unshaken, her quiet strength filling the air more powerfully than any raised voice could. He would recall the moment she revealed her badge, not with pride or anger, but with steady grace, showing that truth needs no shouting to be heard. He would carry in his heart the image of her looking directly into the eyes of those men and teaching them, in simple words, that respect belongs to every human being. That lesson would become a compass for him, guiding the way he treated others and the way he faced his own challenges in life. For the boy, his mother was no longer just the woman who packed his snacks and walked him to school. She was proof that dignity could silence cruelty, and that courage was not always loud. Sometimes it was steady and quiet. Long after that afternoon faded into the past, the strength she showed would remain alive in him, reminding him that true power is not found in uniforms or titles, but in the calm heart that refuses to bow to injustice. That single day became more than a memory. It became a foundation, a life-changing reminder that even the loudest voices can fall silent in the presence of truth.